Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. It's Ukraine, I guess, breaking news update, or at least it's as a result of something that's happened in the last sort of 12, 16 hours or so. And to add to that, a breaking news update. So we're going to start with one element of this and then take it on to this other part of the story. And I am going to get angry. I was seething yesterday about this, and it has got worse. It has got worse in the last 24 hours since I last ranted about this situation. And I find it absolutely despicable, morally despicable. I find it problematic when people lie, and they lie to an audience. I find that irresponsible. I find it incredibly damaging to, in this case, Ukraine and people dying for their right to sovereignty and freedom. I find it despicable that you would lie about that. And then I find it worse that you would then lie again about it, but even worse. Like, the lie that you told the day before wasn't enough, so you add some more to it to further that point. I find it absolutely disgraceful. So we are going to listen to, again, Donald Trump say the same lies he said yesterday, but add another 40 million to the lie. And we are going to see him make some claims that are wholly egregious. And then we're going to try and correct those claims. And then we're going to see where this is taking the situation. I want to say the Republican Party, part of the Republican Party, are now trying to investigate Zelenskyy. Right? This is how terrible this situation is. And I don't have any time for anyone that supports this at the moment. Like, this man is not a good human. Shashank Joshi, for The Economist, this is kind of centre-right publication, saying you have to wonder how Trump supporting former officials angling for jobs in the Trump administration sleep at night when they see videos like this. Must involve galactic levels of cognitive dissonance. When you've got these, like, I want to do the right thing, and I believe that Trump is the right guy, and then he says stuff like this. How do I harmonize this disharmony? And you can't. You can't believe those two things. Like, here is the evidence that Trump is morally compromised, and it's his own words. So let's listen to him.
Biden and Kamala got us into this war in Ukraine, and now they can't get us out. They can't get us out. I watched him. We will win. We will. He's been saying that for 3 years. Every time.
Listen to his voice, like the scorn, how he's treating the war in Ukraine as this political football, and anyone who is supportive of Ukraine is seen in a lesser light here. He's mocking with his tone. That alone irritates the bejesus out of me.
Time Zelenskyy comes to the United States, he walks away with $100 billion. I think.
Yesterday, he said he walks away with $60 billion. He's upped that to $100 billion now, both of which are not true. Every time he comes to the US, he walks away with $100 billion. Is not true.
He's the greatest salesman on earth.
Crowd start booing again.
In that war, unless I'm president, I'll get it done. I'll get it negotiated. I'll get out. We got to get out.
It's this idea that we've got to get out, not this idea that we need to help a country that has been invaded by an aggressive nation, by dictatorship, on an imperialistic jaunt around the globe. It's not that we're doing what's morally right, and it's also not that we're doing what's strategically right for US's best interests. Having Russia win this war is not in the US's best interests. If you want to hand power to Russia, do what Trump wants. So the whole framing of this is entirely wrong.
I'll get it negotiated. I'll get out. We got to get out. Biden says we will not leave until we win. What happens if they win?
And this is where it goes overtly Russian propaganda. This is where this man looks like a tool of Putin. Just listen to what he says. Running for US president. Talking about the new incarnation of the USSR. Imagine Ronald Reagan listening to this. He would be turning in his grave. This is bad.
We will not leave until we win. What happens if they win? That's what they do, is they fight wars. As somebody told me the other day, they beat Hitler, they beat Napoleon. That's what they do, they fight. And it's not pleasant, but, you know, we've given them close to $300 billion.
No, you haven't.
And, you know, Biden and Kamala.
So is what they do is they win wars. They win wars. They're just, well, okay, even if that's true, and we're going to find out it's not true, even if that's true, like, oh, you've won some wars before. You've just invaded this country. Oh, we can't help you. They've won some wars before. Sorry, we can't help you. I know there's genocide. I know people are dying. I know there's civilians being slaughtered. Yeah. We can't help you because they've won some wars before. So we're just going to let them do that. Let it play out. We don't want to get involved because we want to see Russia get stronger and stronger. We want them to help themselves to all your natural resources there. We want them to take over your country. We want them to use the economic power that you've got. We want them to be able to control 40-odd million people, to crush the culture. We want them to gain power geographically, strategically. We want them to have the Black Sea. We want them to have Sevastopol as a naval port to influence the Mediterranean and to get out through the Suez Canal into the Indian Ocean, or to get out through the Mediterranean into the North Atlantic. We want the Russian Federation to have this power. So Ukraine, I'm sorry, we're not interested, because even though we want even though we want USA to maintain ourselves at the top of the hegemonic ladder, we're going to give you up to Russia and let Russia have all of that strategic power. Sorry about that. Or you do something about that. And here we've got Trump advocating letting Russia get what it wants, and lying about that by saying that he said that Zelenskyy, every time he comes to the US, gets $60 billion. He's then upped that to $100 billion, neither of which is true. And then he also says that we have given close to $300 billion. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these claims. We've allocated $300 billion to Ukraine in 3 years. The US will leave the war as soon as I become president. Russia defeated Hitler and Napoleon. Right, when you've got David D, right, who is not pro-Democrat, right? This is somebody who is actually, like, he slags off the Democrats all the time, right? So this is otherwise, I bet you before this war would have been a pro-Trump guy, right? Former military guy. One of the sources I use, pinch of salt and all that, with his claims. But he says, just to clear up something, Russia has never won a war in modern history without Western help or financing. Trump needs to stop saying stupid shit. Never. Right. Okay. So we'll go to that claim first. So let's stick on the history claim. David Frum, former conservative, says Russian wars, a short history. 1905 versus Japan, defeat and revolution. 1914 to 1918, defeat and revolution. 1920 versus Poland, defeat. 1939 to 1940 versus Finland, defeat. 1941 to 1945, near catastrophe, but ultimate victory thanks to, and this is what David D says, massive US and UK economic and strategic aid. Lend-Lease program. So the Lend-Lease was originally used by the US to massively support Russia, the Soviet Union. So the US helped the Soviet Union because it was in their best interest to defeat fascism in Europe. So the amount that the UK and the US helped USSR was huge, and that ultimately led to them prevailing over the Germans, but at a massive cost, and it was basically catastrophic. So before that, it was rather like it's going for the Russians at the moment, which is throw everything, human beings, at the problem and just hope that mass overcomes any issue that you have. David Frum then continues, 1956 versus disarmed civilians in Hungary, victory. 1968 versus disarmed civilians in Czechoslovakia, history. 1969 versus China, draw. 1979 to 89 versus Afghanistan, defeat and revolution. 1994 to 1996 versus Chechens, defeat. 1999 to 2009 versus Chechens, costly victory. 2008 versus Georgia, victory. Moral of the story is, unless against the disarmed civilians or very small countries, or unless backed by massive amounts of US aid, Russian wars tend to end badly for the Russian state. Don't go listening to some random guy who's probably pro-Russian, Donald Trump, because you don't know what you're talking about. Now on the $300 million worth of aid from the US to Ukraine. Let's look at the Kiel Aid Tracker, Kiel Institute Aid Tracker. We can look at, if we want to compare Europe, because I know he likes to have a go at Europe versus American aid. Europe was ahead, apart from in one segment on this, where the bar chart is higher for the US. Other than that, Europe has been giving more aid to Ukraine than the US. On every single, is this split into quarters? I'm not sure. And look at January to March, virtually like nothing there. So that's something to start with. Then when we look at total aid, Europe, $190 billion in terms of total allocated aid and aid to be allocated. The US, about 100 billion. So he's out by 200 billion. He's over-egged that by, he's added on another 200%. Just unbelievable that a man can lie. I mean, he lied yesterday saying every time Zelenskyy goes to the US, how many times has he been to the US? Has he come away with $60 billion each time? No, he hasn't. And then he ups that today to $100 billion. That's even more of a lie. And he gets people to boo Zelenskyy. Like, the guy that's tirelessly going around the world to try and save his country. The guy that courageously stayed in Kiev when a Russian army came knocking at his door. He's getting his crowds to boo him. Like, what kind of person is this that would do that? Okay, so that's the situation. We have a presidential nominee for the Republican Party lying to his audience, getting them to boo effectively, or condoning their booing. I think that's the intention, getting them to look negatively on Zelenskyy, who, remember, that's an ally of the United States, and by extension, by implication, exonerate Putin, who is strategically an enemy of the United States, from any kind of moral culpability in the invasion of Ukraine. So remember, in each of these, as I said yesterday, in each of these speeches, there is no criticism of Putin. There's no holding Putin accountable for any of the actions. Remember, yesterday, he blamed the US for the war. And here, again, saying, you know, we should have got out of it, etc., etc. Anyway, we'll move on. By the way, it's interesting that Trump then said a great day in Louisiana when that speech you just saw was in Georgia. He doesn't even know where he was. But yeah, if you want to go and check out the Kiel Institute tracker, you can see, you know, everything that everyone gives, and you can work out, you know, who is telling the truth when we have claims like that. Okay. Right, then we have the news that Zelenskyy, who supposedly he was going to meet with Trump, is no longer going to be meeting with Trump. Associated Press reports that there is no Zelenskyy-Trump meeting scheduled for this week. Reuters reports no meeting is set up between Trump and Zelenskyy during the UN visit. Trump accuses Zelenskyy of, and here it comes, here we're starting to develop onto the next news piece. Trump accuses Zelenskyy of wanting Democrats to win in the 2024 election and criticized the US aid to Ukraine, while Harris's campaign defends it. Now we are hearing in Politico that House GOP, so the House Republicans, and these are the people who generally support, well, I would say Russia more, but support Trump more in his foreign policy proclamations, more so than the Senate, who are a bit more serious. Remember, I've talked to you previously about how the Senate rule for 6 years. Each of their terms is 6 years, whereas the House GOP is 2 years. So the Senate does more kind of serious foreign policy stuff, because you don't have to worry about campaigning for your next election and talking about really talking divisively about stuff, and you can just concentrate on the, you know, I want to be a bit facetious here, but the big boy subject, you know, the adults are in the room here. That's the kind of Senate, whereas the House of Representatives operate on this 2-year basis, and they are far more likely to be shouting about things that look really good to an extreme part of their base, which is, I think, what goes on here, so they can attract more funding for campaigns. Anyway, the House GOP investigates Zelensky's Pennsylvania visit. So remember, Zelensky went to Pennsylvania, went to the Scranton Army ammunition plant, met with the workers there, was really well received, and met with Josh Shapiro and some senators and other lawmakers. And it was all, I think, a really good visit there. But 9 House Republicans are demanding information on US taxpayer funds spent on security and support for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to the ammunition factory in Pennsylvania over the weekend. Clearly that the visit seemed to benefit Democrats in the swing state. Quote, if taxpayer dollars were used to facilitate this visit in a way that may violate federal laws or ethical guidelines, it is essential that Congress and the public receive a full accounting of these expenditures and motivations behind the visit. The lawmakers, led by Republican Lance Gooden from Texas, wrote in a letter released on Tuesday. Okay, so if you want to see what this looks like, a report says House Republicans are calling for an investigation into Ukrainian President Zelensky's recent visit to the US, questioning whether it was politically motivated to support Vice President Kamala Harris ahead of the November elections, etc., etc. And there you go. There's a little excerpt from that. So we have, that's the investigation they want, just to continue this Politico piece. Zelensky, who's attending the UN General Assembly in New York this week and is due to visit Capitol Hill on Thursday, made the Sunday visit to the factory in Scranton, Pennsylvania, to thank the workers who are producing the most critically needed munitions for his country's war with Russia. However, he was flanked by Democratic officials like Governor Josh Shapiro, Senator Bob Casey, and Representative Matt Cartwright, and the latter to face competitive re-election bids, and Vice President Kamala Harris and former Vice President Donald Trump are neck and neck in the critical swing state. Trump and some other Republicans have been bearish about providing additional aid to Ukraine in their ongoing war. The Ukrainian leader will be on Capitol Hill on Thursday for a bipartisan meeting with senators hosted by Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Zelensky has further raised eyebrows this trip by calling Republican presidential nominee J.D. Vance too radical in an interview with the New Yorker, and saying, quote, the idea that the world should end this war at Ukraine's expense is unacceptable. Vance has been particularly vocal about ceasing additional aid to Ukraine. Now, this is where it gets a bit difficult, because Zelensky is absolutely right in what he says about J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance has been vocal in, and actually quite condemnatory about US support for Ukraine. He's saying there should be no support. So Zelensky, I think, has a right to say he is too, like, here's a person that is saying things that appear to be pro-Russian and anti-Ukrainian in a way like that is too radical for geopolitical stability. But of course, it's election season, and people are going to be interpreting that in a way that has a foreign leader be too overtly pro one party than another. Of course, they're ignoring what people like Viktor Orban have said, and ignoring Putin himself. Some of these people are overtly siding one way or the other, and of course, that's totally fine. But when it comes to, Orban can say what he likes because he's a darling of the right. But when it comes to Zelensky saying something a bit critical of Vance, who has been super critical of help to Ukraine, like, it's not like Zelensky's going to go, oh, thanks, Vance, for that. Thank you very much for effectively slagging us off and saying that you're not concerned about Ukraine, which he has explicitly said. Go and listen to all the things J.D. Vance has said on Ukraine, and then you can understand why Zelensky would say that. And I think he has every right to say that. And it's not about wanting one side. Well, I suppose it is in a way, because there is no way of getting away from the fact that, in my opinion, at least it seems that a Trump-Vance ticket will disadvantage Ukraine more than a Harris-Walz ticket. And as a leader of the country in question here, Zelensky surely has to be doing and saying that which is the most advantageous for his country. He has people dying, right? And so, this is where it just does get a little bit messy. I think this is such a shame that Ukraine then becomes a political football, and it becomes a partisan issue. And it's long been a partisan issue precisely because of the rhetoric of people like Trump and Vance, etc., etc. And when you hear this, right, you can but think, I mean, that just makes me super, super angry what Trump says. But you can but feel sympathy for Zelensky's plight here in trying to navigate these really choppy political waters during the height of a presidential election campaign for both Trump and Harris, and he's got to try and make sense of that. And also, he wants what's best for his country. That's really his only desired outcome here. What is best for Ukraine? That's his job, right? So it blows my mind that you can have overt lying to people. That's bad enough, but like demonizing a leader who is trying desperately to save the lives of his own nation is, I think, morally despicable. And I've lost any last vestige of not even empathy, sympathy, sentiments, any part of my entire existence that might have understood support for Trump. I mean, certainly with regard to Ukraine, is just gone. It's gone. I'm done. You're done for me, Trump. I never would have voted for you anyway, and I'm not American, of course, but your positioning on this matter, I think, is problematic from a purely moral stance, but from a US political stance is equally problematic. Anyway, I thought I'd get that out of the way rather than let that take over my geopolitics video, as it undoubtedly would. Let me know what you think about the legal case, and let me know what you think about Trump's words. I know I'm saying the same things I said yesterday, but he has said the same things, and then he's upped the ante some more. It's joining these dots as well. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing any videos that you do share. Truly appreciated.